Before we start today's video, check out our affiliate links in the description down below. These can make some great gifts with the holiday season just around the corner, or even a gift for yourself. It supports the channel at no extra cost of you. Thanks so much. May the force be with you, and enjoy the video.
Hello there.
This is where the fun begins.
Okay, so this one could be taken as a bit of a stretch, but I remain hopeful on this one. Star Wars Skeleton Crew might have just set up the Mandalorian making an appearance sometime by the end of its show. It's a huge detail from episode 3 that seems to have gone over just about everyone's head, including mine. It's exactly what we're going to be discussing in today's video, breaking it all down for you guys with everything that we know and everything that we're anticipating from this right now. Before we do though, however, grab that subscribe button if you haven't already, as we're discussing and covering all types of Star Wars related news, leaks, rumors, theories, and breakdowns here on the channel. So if you guys are into any of that, go ahead and grab that subscribe button today. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well to be notified for when we have new videos dropping here on the channel almost daily. There is a lot of Star Wars news and stuff going around. It can be a lot to keep track of. It's exactly why we are here. Not just to keep you guys updated with everything, but also break it down for you guys and get a better understanding. As always, I really appreciate all of the support. Okay, so in this video, we are going to be taking a quick read from ScreenRant.com as an overall garnering source, as they're kind of the ones explaining this and really are the ones that I've seen mostly talk about this the most, if for anything, and even them themselves are unsure about, like, are we just clowning, or has Star Wars actually just set up a surprise Mandalorian cameo for Skeleton Crew? Well, it's been a long-running joke among those who know that we're constantly clowning for Din Djarin cameos in various Star Wars shows at this point, ever since the Book of Boba Fett. But we actually think that Star Wars Skeleton Crew could be intentionally setting up for a potential of the Mandalorian's titular hero to appear. Skeleton Crew's timeline is, of course, as we already all know, rooted within the Mandalorian era, that post-Return of the Jedi era, the New Republic era, with the Nikto pirate Vane specifically first introduced in the Mandalorian Season 3, even being a part of Skeleton Crew's cast, and really being that bridging gap. It's a small little reference, but it is there. And though the TV show's creators have said that the story doesn't hinge on the timeline all that much, this doesn't mean things haven't evolved and that they aren't able to do these kind of crossovers and these cameos, because evidently that's kind of the point of the Mandoverse at this point. And as it stands, Vane wasn't even written into Skeleton Crew's story, as the creators have said that they were actually saving the pirate from dying in the Mandalorian Season 3 to absorb him into their story. Like, it was like a last minute decision, really. They were like, oh yeah, we want to do Skeleton Crew, can you leave one pirate alive from the Mandalorian Season 3 to have them kind of bridge together into our show later on? And that's exactly what they did. There have already been quite a few other overlapping themes and references as well between these two shows in particular, because of Vane and other pirates making these stories feel uniquely tied into one another in a way that even other Mandoverse shows like Ahsoka or Book of Boba Fett haven't really necessarily accomplished. Especially Ahsoka. That isn't to say it's a bad show, it just doesn't feel as tied into the Mandoverse as you would like it to be, and in comparison as into other shows. Hopefully Season 2 will be there to change that quite a bit though. And between this and other story elements and Skeleton Crew's third episode, we've officially graduated from clowning to theorizing on the Mandalorian making an actual appearance and cameo for Skeleton Crew. So for one, as aforementioned, Skeleton Crew is set in the Mandalorian era, specifically after the events of Season 3 of The Mandalorian. What the creators said about the story is not hinging on the timeline all that much, and that it's actually one of those things that seems to be up in the air and a little bit more loose in comparison to other Mandoverse shows, and this in particular goes hand in hand with, because they said straight up, because of the way that the kids are going to age, like in real life, and with what they would want to do with a Season 2, even kind of taking into a bit of that teasing territory and kind of even confirming territory of Season 2 of Skeleton Crew in those conversations and in those talks at Lucasfilm. What the creator said about the story is not hinging on the timeline is that essentially it wasn't tied to a specific time period until after the success of The Mandalorian, and that they had decided to team up with The Mandalorian producers Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni to set their story within the same era. When it was initially being written out and kind of like discussed and everything of that nature, one of those things that could have been in the prequel trilogy or prequel era, or even the original trilogy, or even the sequel trilogy for all that matter, but this is kind of where it ended up at the end of the day, and honestly, I think that's a good thing. This, however, doesn't mean that they intend to abandon any and all opportunities to connect the two, and as I had mentioned as well, it's kind of the point of the Mandoverse. If for anything, it means that they certainly have the freedom to do so, if not maybe even a bit of an obligation. Now, what's particularly significant to us is that the creators were so intent on bringing the pirate Vane into Skeleton Crew. Like, it wasn't just kind of like a as simple, cut, clear conversation as I had mentioned, like, oh yeah, can you leave one pirate alive, like Vane, for example, so we can have him in our show? Vane has some personal beef with Din Djarin in particular, once for shooting down the co-host outside the Navarro Cantina and threatening to do the same to him, and again for helping Bo-Katan Kryze and the other Mandalorians take down his captain's ship and alongside the rest of his pirate crew. Corsair to end in his tyrannical conquest of Navarro's main city and kind of beating the pirates once and for all, and sending Vane off into the rest of the galaxy to kind of be a bit of a loner for quite some time. Honestly, I would want it, but there's probably some type of story of like what Vane does in between The Mandalorian Season 3 and Skeleton Crew, like him acting as a bit of a loner in between those two times and before he finds Captain Silvo or Jude Law's character in Skeleton Crew. It's also reasonable to think that not only would Vane went on some type of revenge, but also that Din would keep tabs on this runaway foe and like recognize him. The big eyebrow raiser, let's finally get to it. Let's already talk about it for crying out loud. Skeleton Crew is especially close to what is called the Hii In Way from The Mandalorian Season 3 as well. Speaking of Vane, the hyperspace lane that he and his fellow pirates were plundering when they had targeted the planet of Navarro is known as the Hii In Way, and that it's now very close to where the events of Skeleton Crew are taking place thus far, like the pirate port and everything of that nature. It was even mentioned in the 3rd episode, and so far most of Skeleton Crew's story is centered around this Port Porgo. Not anymore, but a spaceport populated by pirates and smugglers and all of that like. But I definitely think that we'll end up somewhere at some time back on Port Porgo, if not the inhabitants of it making their way out into the rest of the galaxy. Port Porgo is located quite close to what's called the Hii In Way, this hyperspace lane, as if these pirates and smugglers wanted a quick spaceport stop before making their riches on a populated hyperspace lane to like rob these ships essentially. And with that in mind, there's definitely certainly some connection to the Hii In Way. Like, they didn't do that on accident or just for whatever reason. There definitely is a part of that, like, being there for a reason. The Hii In Way hyperspace lane being close to the planet of Navarro, where we last saw the Mandalorian and Grogu settling down on their new home, and as well as where we're seeing the rest of the characters use the Hii In Way in Skeleton Crew as well. Okay, and lastly, the biggest reason as to why we're kind of clowning or to full-on theorizing, though, has everything to do with Skeleton Crew Episode 3, really. This episode sees the character Jod Nana Wood, Jude Law, successfully getting himself and the 4 children, Wim, Neil, Fern, and KB, out of Port Porgo brig and bring them to his friend Kim, this owl-like lady who can potentially chart their path back to the planet of At-Atin. What we learned during this episode, however, as well, is that Jod really isn't who he says he is. Crimson Jack is what he's called by Kim, and the New Republic are familiar with that identity as well in a negative context. Possible Din Djarin connections come into play in various places in this episode. First of all, viewers are alerted to hear the pirate captain who replaces Jod in his crew, Captain Brutus, angrily demanding that they place a bounty on Jod's head after the former pirate captain gets away from Port Porgo, destroying parts of the process. Who would be going after him as a bounty and kind of bringing him into the Bounty Hunters Guild, who's a longtime member of the Bounty Hunting Guild, is Din Djarin. As well as Boba Fett. I think it would be a pretty badass way to reintroduce Boba Fett as well, like being the one trying to hunt down Jod Nana Wood. But this is in part what I'd like to discuss in a separate feature video here on the channel in more detail and in more depth, because there's so much more to it of like they put a bounty on his head and nobody's really talking about it kind of situation and scenario here. There's so many different bounty hunters out in the galaxy during this time period that we could see going after Jude Law and his characters, and especially the way that we last saw the last two, the Mandalorian Din Djarin and Boba Fett, both saying that they're kind of getting back to their own old ways of bounty hunting. Of course, Din Djarin more so settling down on the planet of Navarro and helping the New Republic with like bounty hunting missions. Now that the New Republic is involved with Jude Law's character and like being a suspicion of like kidnapping essentially, maybe they'll call him in to help track down and bounty hunt down, Jude Law and these kids here. Same thing goes for Boba Fett, as he mentions at the end of his own show, like, maybe I'm not all that in a box of Cheez-Its for being a daimyo on Tatooine, and I'd much rather go off and start bounty hunting once again. Of course, let me know all of your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. I would love to hear what you guys are all thinking. Thanks so much for watching today's video. Of course, this has been an unofficial Star Wars. Let me know all of your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. Different theories as well. I'm all ears. Let's discuss. I love to hear what you guys are all thinking. Also, leave a like on the video, as it really does help out the channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure you also check out our merch shop. Use our codes Ahsoka in all caps to get some cash off of your orders. I also have some Amazon affiliate links in the description down below, so if you're looking to buy something from Amazon, whether it's a gift or something for yourself, check out our available links in the description down below. It helps out the channel at no additional cost of yourself and really means a lot. I'll continue to keep those links updated, so they're always changing. So make sure you check them out for what new products we may have available. With whatever way you decide to support the channel, whether it's simply watching today's video or even purchasing a product, it means the absolute world to me. So thank you guys so much. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great one. May the Force be with you as always. Peace out.
Goodbye, old friend. May the Force be with you.